I want to tell you how I found this story, because the way a story finds you matters. It says something about what the story is. This one found me on a Tuesday morning in October in a coffee shop in Constance, on the southern shore of Lake Constance. I was working, laptop open, double espresso, going cold beside it. The kind of deep research session where you follow one thread and it leads to another and another until you look up and 2 hours have passed and the coffee is undrinkable and you have 17 browser tabs open and you're not entirely sure how you got from where you started to where you are now. I was looking for all the water folklore, lakes with histories, bodies of water that showed up consistently in original accounts across centuries. Not the famous ones, not the Rhine, not the places everyone already knows about. The quiet ones, the ones the locals know but don't talk much about. And Lake Constance kept coming up. Not because of any single legend, because of a pattern. A recurring quality in the accounts that stretch back to Roman documentation of the area, through medieval records, through modern reports. Something about that lake that resisted easy categorization. Something beneath the surface, not metaphorically. The accounts were always specific about that. I was reading through a regional archive when I found it. Not a folklore account, a news article from 4 years ago. 3 people had disappeared from a small sailing vessel on the lake in broad daylight. Their friend, the 4th member of the group, the one who had been on the boat with them, was found alone on the vessel 2 hours later by the Coast Guard. She was uninjured. She had no memory of what had happened to the others. She could not explain why she was the only one left. The investigation lasted 11 months. At one point, she was considered a suspect. The word used in the German press was Verdächtige. Suspect. A woman who had just lost 3 friends in circumstances nobody could explain, being investigated for the disappearance while she was still in shock, still unable to speak in complete sentences, still waking up, screaming every night in a hospital bed. The investigation found nothing, no evidence of foul play, no bodies, no explanation. The case was eventually classified as an accident. 3 people lost overboard in a calm weather on a lake with no recorded storm activity that day, and formally closed. She was not released, not because of the investigation, because by the time the investigation concluded, she had been admitted to a psychiatric facility outside Friedrichshafen. Voluntarily at first. Then, after the incident, I will describe later, under a court-ordered hold that has since been extended twice. She has been there for 3 years. Her name is Voss. She's 31 years old. I finished my coffee cold. I opened a new browser tab and I started trying to find a way to speak to her. Lake Constance, Bodensee in German, is the 3rd largest freshwater lake in Central Europe. It sits at the point where Germany, Austria and Switzerland meet, fed by the Rhine coming down from the Alps, stretching roughly 6 miles from east to west and up to 8 miles wide at its broadest point. The water is extraordinary, an unusual shade of blue-green that shifts with the light and the season, sometimes almost turquoise, sometimes so dark it looks like the sky before a storm. On a clear day it looks like a postcard, sailboats, shoreline cafes, the Alps visible in the distance across the water. It is one of the most popular recreational areas in southern Germany. Millions of people visit every year. Most of them have no idea what the lake is. Lake Constance is deep. Not uniformly the western end. The Untersee is relatively shallow. But the main body, the Obersee, drops to over 800 feet at its deepest point. At that depth, the water temperature is permanently near freezing. The pressure is extreme. Light does not reach the bottom. Nothing visible from the surface gives an indication of what is underneath. The Romans documented the lake in the 1st century. Their accounts describe it as a place of unusual power, not dangerous exactly, but charged. They noted that the local Celtic tribes treated the lake with a specific kind of reverence that went beyond ordinary religious practice. Not worship, something more like negotiation. The lake was understood to be a thing with will, a thing that had to be treated carefully, approached on specific terms, acknowledged rather than simply used. Medieval records from the monastery at Reichenau, the island monastery in the western part of the lake that has been continuously inhabited since the 7th century, contain multiple references to incidents on the water that the monks described carefully and attributed to divine or infernal agency, depending on the theological context. Fishermen who went out and did not return in calm weather, a vessel found drifting with its crew gone, lights seen beneath the surface at night, deep, moving, purposeful. The monks had a name for whatever was underneath. They called it the Stiefeding, the thing in the deep, as if precision of description was less important than the acknowledgement that something was there. The pattern, the reluctance to describe, the careful acknowledgement, the negotiation, rather than worship, runs through every century of Lake Constance records I have been able to find. Right up until 4 years ago, when Anna Voss went out on the lake with 3 friends on a calm October afternoon and came back alone. The facts of the incident, as documented in the police report and the subsequent investigation file that I was able to obtain through a Freedom of Information request, are as follows. On the 14th of October, 4 people went out on a sailing vessel on the Obersee section of Lake Constance. The vessel belonged to one of them, a man named Lukas Brandt, 33, an experienced sailor who had kept the boat on the lake for 6 years. The other 3 were his girlfriend Klara Maja, 29, their mutual friend Tobias Schreiner, 31, and Anna Voss, also 31, who had been friends with the group since university. The weather that day was recorded as calm. Wind speed was low. Visibility was excellent. There were no storm warnings, no advisories, no unusual meteorological conditions of any kind. It was, by every measurable standard, a perfect day to be on the water. They left the marina at Friedrichshafen at approximately 2 in the afternoon. There were other vessels on the lake. 2 of them reported seeing the Brandt vessel at various points during the afternoon. The last reported sighting by another vessel was at approximately 4:15, at which point the boat was described as stationary. Sails down, engine off, drifting very slightly. The witness who reported this said he had not found it unusual, but assumed the group had simply stopped to swim or eat. He did not approach. At 6:20, the Coastal Guard received a distress signal from the vessel's emergency beacon. They reached the boat at 6:49. The boat was intact. The engine was functional. The sails were stowed correctly. There was half-eaten food on the table in the cabin. There were 4 life jackets in the storage compartment, unused, and Anna Voss was sitting in the stern. She was not injured. She was not wet. She was completely silent, and she was staring at the water. She did not respond to the Coast Guard officers for approximately 20 minutes. When she did respond, she said 3 words. "Don't look down." She did not speak again for 9 days. Lukas Brandt, Klara Maja, and Tobias Schreiner were never found. Not a body, not a personal item, not a piece of clothing. The lake was searched by divers for 2 weeks. They found nothing. At the depth at which the boat had been drifting, recovery of bodies would have been difficult, but not impossible. The divers reported that their equipment behaved strangely in that section of the lake. Compass anomalies, unexplained current readings. One diver reporting strong and irrational compulsion to descend further than his planned depth that he could not explain, and that his training told him to resist, and that he did resist. But that he described afterwards as the most frightening experience of his professional career. The investigation found no evidence of foul play, no physical evidence connecting Anna Voss to any act of violence, no motive, no history of instability, no prior incidents of any kind. She had been, by every account, from everyone who knew her, one of the most grounded and level-headed people in her social circle. She had been one of the least likely people to end up where she ended up. But here's the thing about the incident that the news articles did not fully report, and that the investigation notes describe with careful, bureaucratic language that nonetheless cannot quite conceal what they are actually saying. When the Coast Guard officers asked Anna Voss in the weeks after she began speaking again what had happened on the boat, what she remembered, what she had seen, where her friends had gone, she told them. And the lead investigator, a 70-year veteran of the Friedrichshafen Water Police, wrote in his personal notes, which were included in the file I received, apparently by administrative error, the following. I have taken 214 witnesses' statements in my career. I have never felt, after taking a statement, that I needed to go home and check that my children were safe. I felt that after this one. I do not know what this woman saw, and I do not know what happened on that boat, but I know whatever she described was not a lie and was not a delusion. She described it with too much specific, verifiable detail about the things she could have not known. I have filed the official report as required. I am writing this separately because I need there to be a record somewhere of the fact that I believe her. Whatever she told me she saw, I believe her. He did not include what she told him in his personal notes. He could not bring himself to write it down. I know this because I found him and I asked him. He said, "Ask her, she'll tell you. She tells everyone who will listen. That's the part of the problem. That's why she's still in there." I sent the first email to the facility director on a Thursday evening, from the same coffee shop in Constance where I had found the case. I did not expect a response. I received one the following Monday. It was polite, brief, and negative. Patient privacy, ongoing treatment, not appropriate for external contact at this time. I wrote back. I explained the project. I explained that I was not a journalist in the conventional sense, that I was researching European folklore, and that Anna Voss's case had come to my attention through historical research into Lake Constance. I explained that I had no interest in sensationalizing her experience. I said that if she was willing to speak, I would like to hear what she had to say. I waited 3 weeks. The second response was longer. The director, Dr. Margit Sauer, a woman whose name I will use because she gave me permission to do so, said that Anna had been informed of my request and had asked to speak with me. That Anna had been in fact been asking to speak with someone like me for a long time. That the facility had been cautious about facilitating this because previous attempts to give Anna a platform for her account had resulted in acute episodes that set her treatment back significantly. But Anna had been more stable recently, and that she had been very specific about wanting to speak. It took 6 more weeks of emails, a formal written agreement about publication parameters, a phone call with Dr. Zawa and Anna's primary psychiatrist, and a signed document acknowledging the clinical context of the interview before I was given a date. I drove to Friedrichshafen on a grey November morning. The lake was visible from the road for most of the drive. I did not look at it for long. A staff member met me at the entrance. His name was Stefan. He has worked the facility for 9 years. He walked me through the security process, the sign-in, the locker for my phone. I was permitted to bring only a small voice recorder, pre-approved, and then we sat for a few minutes in a small room before he took me to Anna. He said he wanted to prepare me. He said, Anna is one of the most coherent patients I have worked with in 9 years. I want to be clear about that, because people have certain expectations when they come here, and I don't want you to walk in there with the wrong frame. She's not confused. She's not delusional in the clinical sense. Her grip on reality is, in most respects, stronger than most people you will meet outside this building. He paused. What she describes, the account of what happened on the boat, is consistent. It has been consistent for 3 years. I asked him if he believed her account. He was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I thought he was not going to answer. Then he said, I believe that she saw something. I believe that whatever she saw was real to her in a way that has permanently altered how she's able to exist in the world. Whether it was real in the way that you and I understand reality. He stopped. He looked at his hands. I have heard her describe it many times, in group sessions, in individual sessions, in the middle of the night, when she wakes the ward up. It is always the same, and every single time I hear it. He stood up. She's ready for you. The room they brought me to was small and plain. A table, 2 chairs, a window with frosted glass that let in grey light without showing anything outside, a water jug on the table that nobody touched. Anna Voss was already seated when I entered. She's small, dark hair, cut short. She was wearing the kind of plain clothes that people wear in places like this, just unremarkable. She looked younger than 31. She also looked considerably older, both things at the same time. She looked at me when I sat down and she said, You found the romance, didn't you? In the archive. That's how you found me. I said yes. She nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she had already known. It's been there for a long time, she said. Whatever is in the lake, the romance knew. The monks knew. Everyone who has spent real time near that water knows. They just don't say it out loud, because saying it out loud makes you end up in a place like this. She said this without bitterness, just as a fact. I asked her to tell me what happened on the 14th of October. She looked at the frosted window for a moment, then back at me. She said, I'll tell you. I've told it many times. It doesn't get easier to tell. But I'll tell you, because someone should have it on record who isn't going to put it in the file and lock the file away. She folded her hands on the table. She took one breath, and she told me. We had been out for about 2 hours. The weather was perfect. Lucas was sailing. Clara was reading on the deck. Tobias and I were in the cabin making food. It was a good day. It was normal. Good. An ordinary day. Then the boat stopped, as if something had taken hold of the hull from underneath and simply held it. Lucas said afterwards that the rudder felt like it was locked in concrete. He couldn't move it. The engine wasn't on, so that wasn't the issue. The sails weren't completely slack, even though there was wind. We all felt it at the same moment. A kind of lurch, and then total stillness. Tobias came up from the cabin first. He looked over to the side of the boat, into the water. I came up behind him. I looked over too. She stopped. The water was clear. It's usually quite clear in October. The algae have died back. You can see down a long way, and there was something down there. I asked her what. She looked at me with an expression that was not quite fear and not quite grief, and was somehow both at the same time. "Light," she said, "coming from deep down." The light was beautiful, moving slowly through the dark water, shifting as it rose. Blue and white, and something between the two that I don't have the color word for. Tobias and I were just watching it. The way you are when you see something you have never seen before, and your brain hasn't decided yet whether it's dangerous. Lucas said, "Get away from the side." He said it very quietly. I remember thinking that I had never heard him speak that quietly before. Lucas was a loud person. He was the loudest person in any room, and he said it so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Clara was still on deck. She hadn't looked over the side. She was looking at Lucas's face. I remember thinking, she's not looking at the water, she's looking at his face. She knows something is wrong, because his face is wrong. And then Tobias reached further over the side. Anna stops here. Real stop. She looks at the table. When she continues, her voice is different, flatter, more careful. I don't know why he did it. I have thought about it every day for 3 years, and I don't know. He wasn't a reckless person. He was the most careful person I knew. But he reached over to the side and put his hand into the water. The light stopped, dead still, suspended in the black water, completely motionless, like it had felt him. And then it moved. It launched. It tore upward through the water like something had been released, like a pressure that had been building since before we arrived on that lake had finally found what it was waiting for. Faster than anything living should move. Faster than anything should move. Brighter with every second, filling the water beneath us. White and violent and wrong. And I was screaming and pulling Tobias's jacket, and it was almost at the surface, and then she stopped. She pressed her hands flat on the table. It stopped. The light just stopped. Went out, like something had turned it off. The water went completely black, and for 1 second everything was completely still and completely silent, and I actually thought, it's gone. Whatever it is, it was gone. We're okay. And then the water exploded. Not a wave, not a splash. The surface just burst open. Something came up fast. Faster than anything that size should be able to move. And it took Tobias, and he screamed. He screamed in a way I had never heard a human being scream before. It was not fear. It was beyond fear. A sound I did not know a person could make. And the water took him down. And the screaming went underwater with him, and it muffled. It muffled the way sound goes down when it goes underwater. And I could still hear it. I could still hear him screaming from underneath the surface. And then it stopped. The water went flat, like he had never been there. Lucas didn't think. He just went in. He loved Tobias. They had been friends since they were children. And he went over the side before any of us could move. He hit the water, went under, and I waited for him to come back up. I was waiting for his head to break the surface. I was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there were bubbles coming up from somewhere far below, and then, not even that, the water went flat again, like the lake had simply swallowed him and smoothed itself over. Clara was standing completely still. She hadn't moved during any of it. She was standing on the deck, staring at the water where Lucas had gone in, and her face was, well, wrong. The same way the light had been wrong. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was just looking. And then, very slowly, she turned her head and she looked directly down over to the side, straight down at whatever she saw down there. Her face went somewhere else, like she had already left, like whatever was looking up at her from the water had already taken the part of her that mattered, and what was standing on the deck was just reminder. She stepped over the side, calmly, like stepping off a curb into a street she had already decided to cross. I was holding her arm, and she stepped over, and the water took her without a sound. No splash, no struggle, nothing. Just a lake, flat and dark and silent. I sat down in the stern. I didn't look over the side. I looked at the sky until the Coast Guard came. I kept saying, "Don't look down, don't look down," because it felt important that someone knew. It felt like the most important piece of information in the world. I couldn't tell them what I had seen. Not at first. Not because I didn't remember, because I couldn't find language for it. The light, the way it moved, the way Tobias's hand broke the surface, the way Clara's face went somewhere else before she went over. When I finally told them, they wrote it down and looked at each other, and I could see them deciding what kind of problem I was. And I understood. I would have decided the same thing. I asked Anna what she thought it was. She looked at me, thinking. Then she said, "The Romans called it something. The monks called it something. Every culture that has ever lived near the deep water has called it something. The names are all different, but they're all describing the same thing. Something that lives in the deep, something that has been there longer than we have. That something is not malicious. I want to be clear about that because people always assume malice. It's not malicious. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't want to hurt us. It's just hungry. And it's very, very patient." I drove back along the lakeshore after the interview. The water was dark by then. It was late afternoon. The light going fast, the way it goes in November. The lake was almost black and completely flat, and it stretched to the horizon in every direction like the edge of the world. I did not stop the car. I did not look at it for long. Anna Voss remains at the facility outside Friedrichshafen. Dr. Zawa told me when I emailed her to arrange this episode that Anna is stable, that she has good days, that she participates in group sessions and tends to facility's small garden and reads a great deal, but she does not go near water. Any water. The facility accommodates this. The court-ordered hold has been extended for a third time, not because Anna is violent or because she is a danger to herself, because every time she has been assessed for release, she says the same thing to the assessment panel. She says, "If you release me, I will go back to the lake. I have to go back and look down." She says this calmly, without drama, like someone describing a medical necessity. The panel, each time, has determined that this does not represent a safe basis for release. I think about Tobias putting his hand in the water. I think about Clara's face going somewhere else. I think about the diver who felt compulsion to go deeper than he should, who resisted, who came back up. I think about what the difference was between him and Tobias. And I think about Anna, who had Clara's arm and kept saying, "Don't look down, Don't look down. Don't look down. And who looked at the sky until the Coast Guard came, and who has been paying the price for surviving ever since. She was the only one who didn't look. The only one who came back.